get a personal letter from Santa Claus. And it says, "Dear City of Newberry, I'm extremely pleased to introduce to you these magical elves named Nick and Noel Berry, who have been assigned to your beautiful city this Christmas season. Every day between now and Christmas Eve, they will be there in your city watching you. They are one of my many elves, and their job is to record you when you are naughty and nice. They do not speak. Each night when you go home, they will report back to me at the North Pole and then hurry back to your city. There's only one rule you have to follow. Do not touch them. For if you do, their magic will fade and not allow them to fly to the North Pole at night. Each morning, your magical elves may choose a new location to spend the day watching you. They are tricky elves and might try some silly tricks, so be on the lookout for where they might be each morning and what mischief they might have engaged. Have a wonderful time with your new friends. I look forward to visiting your city on Christmas Eve. Until then, be good little boys and girls." So I hope everybody in the city watches that, and you will look for them for their locations on the City of Newberry Facebook page. I think that they will find some exotic places to watch from, if I know our utility department. With that, I have a couple of changes to our agenda. First, under agenda items, the item E, the property tax collections audit services, that was supposed to be an informational only at tonight, so we're going to move that to presentations. Also under agenda items, item C, the card lock site lease, that is also informational. It was supposed to be just a presentation. If you think that the agenda is long, we can move that to the consent agenda. It won't take too long for Jamie to tell you what he's worked out, but that is an option. So item E for sure will be moved under the presentations. What's the commission's wish on item C? Do you want that on the consent, or do you want to hear Jamie give you a little
I'd hate to
presentation?
deny Jamie an opportunity to speak.
I know he does love to come up here and talk. So we'll move item C. So under presentations, item C, we'll leave it at C, will be the card lock lease, and item D will be the property tax collections audit. Is that amenable to everyone on the dais? Oh. Nothing actionable. It's
Mr. Mayor,
it's a sightly, yeah. Go ahead, Mike.
We'll go into detail. Staff can go into detail at that time. Actually, the terms of the lease are such that it doesn't warrant commission approval. It doesn't bind the city to anything. It's easy to escape. Doesn't cost us anything. So we intended to make it an informational item and just miscommunicated in developing the agenda item.
It's actually pretty cool, so I'm glad you guys will listen to the presentation. He's made a great deal for us. Okay, so with those two modifications, do I have a motion to approve? I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any other questions on the agenda from the dais? Any questions or comments on the agenda from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously. I'd like to invite Pastor Karen Burst from the Newberry Methodist Church to give us our invocation today. Thank you for your participation this last weekend, and thank you for being here tonight. At the end of the invocation, if you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you for having me. Please pray with me. Gracious God, we ask that your Spirit come and dwell in us and among us in this room tonight. Guide the leaders, give them wisdom, give them hearts of generosity and gratitude. May they lead with justice and fairness. Lord, we pray that you will bless this city. Continue to pour out your blessings in ways in which the leaders make decisions that is in the best interest of all who live here, who come to work here, who come to play here. Make this community be a place that shines your love and your peace. Be with us now and be with all who speak tonight. Give them the grace to speak with words that are easily understood and heard clearly. We ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic Thank you, Pastor Burris. Okay, we'll move to our presentations. We have the FMEA Building Better Communities Award. We always love to have that. And Ms. Snyder, are you going to lead? Or is Mike Ulick taking us through that?
I guess another miscommunication. This will be me, Dallas?
Well, somebody give us the good
Somebody
news,
give
because
us
we
the
got
good
an
news.
award here. We want to hear all about it.
Mr. Mayor, Ms. City Commissioners, Tammy Snyder, our Customer Service Supervisor, will present the sign.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the Commission, Mayor. October the 24th, City of Newberry for the third year was presented the Building Stronger Community Service Award. Quite proud. The award was presented to the City of Newberry because of our support for community outreach, including festivals such as the Watermelon Festival, longest running festival in Florida, the West Fest Music Fest, and our support for the Main Street festivities and the two festivals. I think there's one in the spring. We recently had the one this past fall, and it was a wonderful festival. We work with organizations on public outreach to meet the needs of our customers and our citizens with fee waivers and reductions, as well as assistance with utility processes. We're currently working with organizations on programs that will hopefully bring those organizations to the City of Newberry so that our customers and our citizens won't have to travel to Gainesville and to other areas, because transportation sometimes can be an issue. We support charitable events throughout the community by sponsoring Relay for Life, United Way, conducting an employee food drive at Thanksgiving, a children's gift and toy drive at Christmas, as well as the installation of holiday lights at Christmas in the city. We were quite proud this year of the participation of the community both in Gainesville and Newberry with the response to Hurricane Michael. We received a number of communications from other organizations looking for some place to take the donations, and the City of Newberry and stepped up in a big way, and they were just absolutely awesome. We provide our customers with a free do-it-yourself online energy auditing tool, as well as free yearly energy audits for both water and electricity kits that are available to our customers. And in the words of Newberry City Manager Mike New, community is a core value to our organization, and we are thrilled that Newberry has once again received statewide recognition for its work in our community.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I can't think of another community that does as much or more than we do to build those strong relationships. So it's great when you get recognized for it. So thank you for telling us a little bit about that, Ms. Snyder. We appreciate it. All right, our next presentation is about code enforcement updates. Ms. Wolf, welcome back again.
Good evening.
Always good to find out what's been going on in your world.
Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, it's good to be with you again. If you recall back in February, I provided a little overview on code enforcement and the process as provided for in state statutes and in our city ordinances. And tonight I'd like to share a little bit with you about the importance of code enforcement and then show you some of the progress we've made over the last 10 months. So this is provided by the American Association of Code Enforcement.
Faces struggles with vacant buildings, trash, tall grass and weeds, graffiti, and inoperable or abandoned vehicles. Every community has buildings, homes, and properties that will age over time. Studies have shown that communities with areas of light and deteriorated properties may eventually see an increase in crime rates and a significant decrease in property values. Code enforcement officers provide the first line of action in managing these issues in a responsible and effective way. So, who are code enforcement officers? Code enforcement officers enforce ordinances, rules, and regulations that take into consideration the safety and well-being of the public, including fire Enforcement of these ordinances can be essential to ensuring safe and healthy conditions for everyone living and working in the community. As the rates of foreclosed properties and bankruptcies continue to soar, communities are struggling to find ways to manage these properties and address the various code and ordinance violations that may be connected to the growing number of vacancies. This has affected and significantly expanded the role of code enforcement officers. In addition, awareness and concern for an increasing elder population has brought other issues to the forefront, such as elder abuse, self-neglect, and boredom. Code enforcement officers are often part of the problem-solving teams and task forces which address these issues. The American Association of Code Enforcement, or ACE, founded in 1988, represents code enforcement officers in all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and Canada. ACE's mission is to educate, elevate, and improve the profession of code enforcement by providing career development, training and educational support, certification resources, and professional advancement to their members. Code enforcement officers provide our communities with intrinsic and tangible benefits, which can profoundly impact and enhance our safety, health, and overall quality of life. With the support of community members, legislators, businesses, and residents, others can come to understand and appreciate the contribution and service that code enforcement officers provide. So, who are code enforcement officers? They are professionals, communicators, zoning inspectors, housing inspectors, public servants and officials, problem solvers, mediators, educators, and most of all, community advocates, working to enhance our property values and quality of life, and to make our communities safer places to be, to work, and to live.
So, we could
She'll get you there.
Here we go. So I'm your community advocate to promote safety, health, and welfare of our community. And I want to do that by helping you to embrace the past and enhance the future. And we can show you a little bit of how we've done that over the last 10 months. They say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So I want to show you some photos tonight, before and after shots of some of the things that we've done to make Newberry a more beautiful place. This is the kind of photo I think of when I think of Newberry. You recall that we talked about the action order and complaint process and how we got inputs from various sources to create action orders. And these action orders are what become complaints that we investigate to determine if there is or isn't a code violation, and then what tools in our chest we use, what options to get these violations corrected, be it through contact and education, a courtesy type notice or a door hanger type notice, or a notice of violation. And if there is no violations, or if it's something that needs to be referred, we do that and then close out the action order. So the outputs is to get the violations corrected. If they are, no further action. Not corrected, then we open an enforcement case and ultimately would take it to the special magistrate, which we now have in operation and in effect. So this is the complaint process and how we react. And I'd like to share with you some before and after photos of some of the different areas that we've been involved in this year.
Please do.
With regard to accumulation of junk, appliances, trash, and debris. And just as an aside, you'll see an instant picture of the existing violation or the before shot, and then it'll transition into the after shot. So those are a few of the accumulation of junk types of things that we've been handling. Another issue that we deal with quite often is unlicensed or inoperable vehicles and illegal parking of trailers and recreational vehicles and improper location of trucks and boats. So here's a few examples of that. Sometimes the violator makes a great effort in order to show compliance. In this particular case, with a inoperable vehicle that wasn't licensed, they got it fixed, and then they even left a little note on the tag to show that it's now functional. So I've gotten a tremendous amount of cooperation from our citizens. Sometimes we get them corrected in one location and then the violation moves to another location. But we keep at it until we get the violation corrected where it's not going to come back again. With regard to RVs, they can't be parked in the front yard. They need to be in the side or rear yard. This particular case, someone was very innovative. They decided to make their RV in the backyard, advertise it as an Airbnb and rent it out. Quite innovative, but unfortunately doesn't comply with the code. Here's another one where we have an RV in the side yard that was being occupied, and we had that removed. A logging truck in a residential neighborhood. Boats and trailers can't be parked in the right-of-way. This particular vehicle was abandoned in one of our county parks, and we found out that the property owner had been arrested, and this was left there for a couple of days. We had it removed. Parking on top of the sidewalk. Another area we're having quite a bit of problem with is parking to sell your vehicle within the right-of-way. The state of Florida does not allow sale of vehicles within the right-of-way, and our ordinance prevent extended parking in the right-of-way as well. We're working with Florida DOT on this issue, and we're trying to get some signs that will post within these stub outs along Newberry Road, which is where this has occurred quite frequently. In the area of signs, we've had a lot of issues with satellite internet companies coming in and putting signs up, and not only putting them in the right-of-way, but putting them on our street signal signs. And this is what we want our street signs to look like, not posted with advertisements. Here's some more examples of internet advertising. This is a problem that you've probably all seen on Newberry Road, which was a portable sign being advertised on a bus that was inoperable. And we cited them as an illegal portable sign because it was visible from the right-of-way. And there were several other violations on this property with regard to trash and debris, inoperable vehicles, abandoned vehicles, appliances, boats. And this has now all been corrected. The trash and debris put in a dumpster and hauled away. Examples of some of the zoning violations: unpermitted businesses. This was a firewood operation that was being conducted in a residential neighborhood. And they've ceased selling firewood. Another area was a motor vehicle auto repair operation in a residential neighborhood. And that's now gone. With regard to trees and vegetation, we're issuing the tree permits for hazardous trees and give you a few examples of that. We've had some very large old laurel oak trees that are at the end of their lifespan. We had that bad storm back in March where we had a lot of tree damage with broken branches that became hazardous, and we've gotten those taken care of. This was a tree that fell from city property onto private property, and we had that removed. And there you see another decaying tree. Here's some tree debris that fell on the weatherhead of providing power to a house. We want to maintain our sidewalks and make this look like this. Getting rid of vegetative debris. With regard to hazardous lands and dangerous structures, some of the hazardous lands issues, weed growth over 12 inches in height. You can see in the background there how dense that vegetation is, and now they've done some clearing and mowing to make that a whole lot better. You can barely see the mobile home in the background, and what a difference. So one of the things that I think we've made great strides in is the removal of dilapidated or damaged mobile homes that were causing perhaps severe hazard to the community, both in beauty and in property values. And here's some examples of that. We condemned 6 mobile homes in the community that were not being lived in at the time. And all of these had significant minimum housing violations. Got rid of the mobile home, cleaned up the lot, restored the foundation, put a new mobile home on the lot, and now we've got a new living unit back in the tax base. Here's some other examples. This is a person that was deceased, and no one was taking care of this particular unit. It had been abandoned. We got a hold of some relatives, and this was demolished piece by piece by 5 individuals. And is now brought back to bare ground. We had another property that had a mobile home that caught on fire back in 2017 and was also abandoned. And we posted this and took it through the special magistrate process. And cleanup has started on this one to the point where it's now probably somewhat safe, but it's not completed. The third mobile home was a mobile home that was not being lived in, but firewood was being stored in. And we worked with the property owner to eventually get a contractor to do demolition on this one. Brought it back to the foundation. This individual was out of state, or out of the community for a while, and we got a hold of relatives and worked with them, helped them find a contractor to clean the lot and do demolition of this mobile home. Restored the lot back to the natural condition. And finally, the 6th mobile home, again, also was an heir's property that had pretty much been abandoned. And we did find an heir that we worked with to get the property cleaned out. Some of the other dangerous structures, hazardous lands issues that we deal with, decks and pools. Decks can be quite dangerous, especially if the boards are all rotted out, and pools with water that's contaminated or drawing mosquitoes and not being treated properly. So this was the deck repaired. This is what the pool looked like before we issued a notice, and screens missing. And here's what it looks like now. This was a property that back in January was reported to us as being one of the most needed properties to get cleaned up. And it was also property with two deceased owners. They were named Lundy and Murray, and we could not find anybody that was linked to the ownership. And eventually the tax collector took this to auction with the property appraiser and the tax collector. Property was auctioned off. We got a new owner that we worked with, and this property has been cleared and reseeded, and it's no longer a dumping ground and area where vagrants have been established. Improvement of property without a permit is a constant problem that we work with the builder to try, and the owner and the property tenants to try to properly get building permits so that it's inspected and built according to code. In this particular case, this was a driveway that was built without a permit that was right at the edge of the intersection, which was a safety hazard. And working with the Public Works Director, we wanted this moved back to where that driveway did not come right out to the intersection. This was a sign that had been knocked down. That was a non-conforming sign that was not permitted to be put back up, and a stop work order was issued to have that sign removed. Construction that gets kind of anxious and they want to start before their permit is issued, we work with the property owners to make sure that that doesn't occur and that the permit is issued and properly inspected. Here's another example of some construction work that was done without a building permit. Some other issues that we deal with, zoning issues, lighting that's installed that causes glare to adjacent residences. This was a property where the owner had some, I guess, knowledge of electricity and did some electrical work, and he installed his own intense street lights in his front yard, and we got him to remove those because of the problems it was causing to the adjacent property owners. And we also, from time to time, deal with minimum housing issues, be it electrical, mold, or construction that's not permitted, or in the case of the bottom right, septic tank that's leaking and exposed. So we've taken the action orders and we've gone through the process, and we talked a little bit how we, what we do when we discover the violation, issue the notice of violation. If it's not corrected, we issue further formal notices of violation if we can't get voluntary compliance, and then it goes through the request for hearing process, goes before the special magistrate, and then if the violation is corrected, no further action, the case is closed. If not, a fine can be established by the special master through an order and a lien filed by the city, and eventually, worst case scenario, possible foreclosure action. So that's the code enforcement procedures that we follow on all of these action orders. So how have we done over the last 10 months? Well, as far as the action orders are concerned, we've processed 220 action orders from the 6 different inputs that we received. And out of those 220, 173 were code violations. 41 had no action required. They were not code violations. And 6 of them had issues, but were not code enforcement issues. For example, it could be an issue with animal control. It could be an issue with EPD or some other agency. And we've worked quite closely with animal control, EPD, the Alachua County Sheriff's Office, Department of Business Professional Regulation, and Department of Children and Families. So out of those 173, we tried to contact all of them. And because our best solution is just education and communication. And so through those contacts, we've hopefully gotten a lot of that resolved. We've only issued 47 what we call our door hanger or courtesy type notices, where we try to go one step further but get voluntary compliance. and so 47 warning notices, and then we've issued, I believe, 35 formal notices of violation. 47, as I said, were closed as action orders, not requiring any further action. So out of that 173, I believe it's 143 were taken care of without the first issuance of paperwork. Just working with the property owner or responsible party. 30 were not corrected, and these cases are still pending compliance, and 15 have been scheduled for the special magistrate, 15 cases. Of those 15 cases, we've heard 11. The other 4 will be heard this December 19th, and we've been successful in all 11 cases in getting an adjudication as a violation. So what are the statistics based on those numbers? Well, 78% of the action orders involved true code violations. 53% of those code violations were corrected through contact and education. Only 27% of those violations received a courtesy notice, and only 20% of the violations received a formal notice of violation. So what that tells me is we're getting a lot of cooperation and a lot of good action by our citizenry and by builders and by responsible parties, be it tenants, to, once they're aware of the requirements, to come into compliance. Well, 83% of the code violations that we've had have been corrected and cases closed. 17% of those violations are pending compliance, and 8% of the code violations have been scheduled for a special magistrate hearing. So that's our progress for the first 10 months of the year.
Some pretty impressive statistics there, Mr. Wolf. Does the commission have any questions?
Be happy to answer any questions.
Assuming with an 83% or 100% success rate with a special magistrate, the special magistrate, in your view, has been a positive policy that this board adopted.
I think it has, and,
Okay.
and in fact, you know, when I worked for the county, I was a little bit skeptical about going from a code enforcement board to a special magistrate, but I think it's been productive, and I think we've worked well to achieve compliance and with very little penalties.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
One question I do have is like the refrigerators and washers and dryers and stuff that are left out of the curbside that were a violation. Is that because the Waste Pro did not pick them up? Was that an actual violation of the owner?
I think it's some of both. We've had some where the Waste Pro has perhaps missed a pickup, or it was put out way before the pickup was due. And my biggest concern is safety, that we don't have a refrigerator out there with a door or something that a child could turn over and get trapped in.
Sure.
But those we try to handle very quickly, and even if necessary, get a special pickup from Waste Pro.
Okay, thank you.
Does Waste Pro pick up refrigerators, appliances? Do they?
Yes, sir, they do.
I live out in the country, so I don't get that level of service. Congratulations. All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate the update. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we have a moment in the agenda for public announcements. These are the... Did I miss one? Oh, I'm sorry. We moved things. You're right. Come on down, Jamie, and tell us about the card lock site lease, please.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. The item that we have before you is informational only. As the city manager had indicated, we had a little confusion on how it needed to be presented. We were approached by Lewis Oil, the city fuel vendor. They were looking to site a card lock fueling station to facilitate the fueling of Alachua County Sheriff's Office vehicles and potentially the ambulance and Alachua County Fire and Rescue vehicles in the city of Newberry. We worked with them to determine where we might could site that on city property that would not only have access but be connected to emergency power in case of a power outage, and it would be a secure site. And we were able to determine that the Public Works compound was the best place to site that. The card lock lease basically identifies that they will install a fuel system at the City Public Works Facility. There'll be no cost to the city. They will provide all the environmental insurance, name the city as an additional insured. Basically, it gives them the right to use a 50 by 50 approximate area for this fueling for the sheriff's vehicles, and they can access the city facility through the electronic gate code, and it will give us a higher level of security at our facility with the law enforcement presence coming and going 7 days a week. So we just wanted to bring that to the Commission's attention. A side benefit to this, in an emergency situation, it gives us access to a larger amount of fuel on site in a hurricane, so we can use it for our equipment and our personnel or any mutual aid companies that come in to help us with the electric system.
I think the benefit in an emergency situation and the increased traffic around Triangle Park, especially in those evening hours, I think are two pretty significant benefits. So, does the Commission have any questions for Jamie on this? Good thinking, good strategy. Commissioner Martin?
Jamie, who actually owns this? Lewis?
Lewis would own the equipment.
Okay.
That would be placed on the 50 by 50 site. It's actually the city property. The way the lease is set up is year to year. At any time that we determine that it's not advantageous for the city, or Lewis Oil determines the same, 90 days notice, we basically can extricate ourselves from the arrangement, and they have to remove their equipment.
Okay. And what if the vendor and the county have a parting of ways? What happens then?
Well, as I said before, it is their equipment. They are our fuel vendor as well. This doesn't preempt our fueling equipment, but it does give us the access to additional fuel on site.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
What about our own fuel? How is it being protected from being stolen?
Basically, we have a computerized fuel system with cloud-based monitoring of the tank levels. We record all the readings, any fuel deliveries that we get. We reconcile that through our computer system, and the fuel vendor has access to it as well. Every single city employee has a access code and basically computerized keys. So when they fuel up a piece of equipment, it's tracked by employee, it's tracked by department, it's tracked by a piece of equipment, and it's reconciled monthly. And that information is also transmitted to the finance department electronically.
Are there any kind of security cameras or anything?
There is no security cameras, but it is in a locked facility, and it's a lighted, secured facility. The other additional benefit to this system with Lewis, if we had an issue with our fueling equipment during normal hours, we could access and fuel our equipment from it.
Any further questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Manager?
it's my understanding that it also locked us into fuel pricing that is better than we previously had access to. Is that correct?
That's correct. It guarantees us that our purchase price will be same as the Sheriff's Department on not only gasoline but on diesel as well.
All right. Well done. Any other questions?
So we'll know exactly what the sheriff is charging for fuel then.
That's right. Excellent point. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, our last presentation of the night is a property tax collection audit services. Welcome, sir. You very rarely get the chance to visit us here, so we appreciate it when you do.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Commission, Mr. Manager, and the citizens. I'm Ed Crapo, and with me tonight is Assistant Property Appraiser Colleen Keene. And we appreciate the opportunity to make this presentation. I'm trying to do two things within my office, and then in order to pay for it, I'm asking you to do one thing, I guess. So I'll try to tell you what it is that we're trying to do up front, and then come back to what the memorandum of understanding that is before you. And then I guess we're going to leave you to think about this. We'll be available to workshop it with you if you like. And we would hope that you would bring it back on your next meeting and act on it. But one of the programs currently within my office is Homestead Investigation. And that is, we go through and we look at those properties that we think may be unfairly receiving the homestead exemption. It's a big task, it's difficult, and what we've done is we've approached a company called Tax Management Associates, TMA. They're out of Charlotte, North Carolina. They work nationally, and they do the same work in a lot of different areas, and have been doing what I'm proposing to do successfully in several different places in Florida at this time. What they have is large computers and huge databases. So they can take all the information that we have about individual homestead exemptions, and basically we're talking the Social Security number. And they can run that Social Security number against national databases, and they can come back and they can tell us, you know, that person died 2 years ago in Peoria, Illinois. As a database, we probably wouldn't even legally have access to gather that information. But they do, and they can, and then they'll give that property to us to follow up with. Now, I will say that there's nothing in anything we're doing here that's going to cost any of my jurisdictions any money, and there's nothing that will take any of your current money away. All right? In fact, it's going to add money. There's nothing in anything that we're going to do that transfers any authority to TMA. Everything is going to be supervised as if they're a staff member. And in effect, that's what they are. They're an extension of the staff, and every step of the way that they're working is going to be under our direct supervision in the office. And in the case of homestead exemption investigation, you know, there's at least 4 different steps in there that keep coming back to us for a decision. The other program that I'm asking them to work with us on enhancement is intangible personal property audits. We have the same legal requirement to inspect every property once every 5 years on tangible property that we do on real property. Tangible property is a little more difficult to get around to do that, and a lot of the inspections that we do now are book audits, more or less, and TMA would be doing a fair share of those as well. What TMA does have is that they have a national database and experience, so that they can come up and they can go, you know, this is a 4-partner CPA firm with 10 licensed CPAs and the auxiliary staff to support them. We know from our database that the amount of tangible personal property they should have is X, and what they're reporting is Y. And so they can run that sort of data and tell us, you know, this is a property we should maybe look at. Well, they have that ability. But the other thing that's going to happen is we're going to actually ask them to do audits of particular businesses. We're going to choose a group every year, and we're going to refer them to them, and they will do the audits for us. I don't have a CPA on staff. I can't afford one. They've got hundreds of them. So essentially I've got access to a CPA to do this stuff, to do this work with a knowledgeable person, to get it done right, to get, you know, to make certain that the business owner that we're dealing with is being treated correctly and right at the same time that all this is going on. Now, what's a little bit different is I'm not going to pay for any of it, not up front. They're doing this on a commission basis. And what that means is they want a percentage of the new or additional taxes collected off the work that they do. Now, the tax collector, when they receive their payments for property taxes, legally can only distribute those property taxes back out by the millage rates that they came in. So in order for there to be any variance, the taxing jurisdictions involved in that particular piece of property have got to agree and give the tax collector permission to pay TMA. it's a one-time thing, but on a homestead exemption, the process results in a lien is filed against their property. If and when that lien is paid, the tax collector would pay TMA as well as the tax jurisdictions. It would be money you're not currently getting. Year one, it would be money that you didn't have in your budget. In year two, it's going to be, year two, TMA's out. The agreement that we have proposed to you is for 18 months right now anyway. That was to give us long enough time to get all the way through this and maybe do it once. It's been done so successfully in different communities that I think will be all right as well. Interestingly enough, it's about 1 to 1.5% of the properties that they find in investigation that are problematic. So countywide, we've got about 65,000 homestead exemptions. We're going to get affirmation that most of those are okay, but there's going to be that 1 or 1.5%. For the city of Newberry, I think you have 1,450 homestead exemptions in the city limits. If the percentages come through, then we're talking about roughly 20, 21 people in the city limits that we're going to be talking to about whether or not they're eligible for the homestead exemption. It's probably a good time to take my foot out of my mouth and see if anybody's got any questions.
Okay. Does the board have any questions? Mr. Crapo?
Mr. Mayor, just real quickly, we've vetted this from the legal side, and we've looked at the agreement between Mr. Crapo's office and Tax Management Associates. He's right. They do retain, or Ed retains all control, 100% control of whatever goes to Tax Management Associates, or TMA, as it's referred to in the document. And so whatever homestead questions there might be are in his bailiwick whether to turn it over. And of course, he has a lot of he's been around a long time doing what he's doing. I think it's 30 years.
No, it's 38.
38.
I can remember when you joined your law firm. And we both had dark hair. So.
Once upon a time. And so he retains all of the ability to turn it over. In other words, if a husband and wife are separated and they've been separated, he knows about it and they both are claiming homestead, then he doesn't turn that one over because they're entitled to do that. And sometimes they have a written agreement for their separation. So it's only those instances where he needs the investigation. As he stated, there's an out clause if he wants to get out of the contract. There's an out clause if we want to get out of the contract. And so from that standpoint, I think he's vetted and answered all the questions that we had regarding legals looked at it. We would approve and would authorize the city go forward. I would point out also that the county has approved this, the school board, City of Gainesville, Micanopy, Archer. I'm not sure if there's any others.
Library District. I took it to the school board and the county and the City of Gainesville first because I didn't figure it was worth wasting anybody else's time if they wouldn't sign on it. And because of the nature of the way we pay our property taxes, when I get my bill, I can't elect to say, well, I live in Newberry and I like Newberry, so I'll pay the Newberry share, but I'm not going to pay the county share. The collector just simply sends you your check back and says, you didn't do that, try again. You have to pay 100%. And so if everybody except for, say, 2 jurisdictions signs the agreement, then those 2 jurisdictions are trying to get everybody else to pay their portion of this. And that's not fair to me. So I've said it's 100% or we're out.
So that's it's all 9 municipalities, county, all governors all government entities have to be on board.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Now, if it came down to the only 2 that weren't in, for Hawthorne and La Crosse.
Small enough you could deal with those numbers.
I could just say, I'd exclude all those properties. I wouldn't have them working there. But that's also unfair to the rest of us, you know. I mean, we're going to get some professional assistants to do what I do more efficiently, more effectively, and it needs to be done, needs to be done across the board. And it's really turned out superior results statewide. And I think Duval County right now is doing it and having a great response as well.
Commissioner Coleman?
I give Ed everything on my 8 hours. But look, there's only so much the staff appraisers can do, which is in a 5-year rotation, trying to put it in the way y'all always see me work. So it's a 5-year rotation. Here, Ed's taking this, which is, I think is super great because he's, I don't know if you want to call him a subcontractor, but he's not taking money out of the budget to go out and say, hey, find us more money, because these people are, he's not going to say it, but they're violating the law. So, and especially on tangible is very, very, it's tough. I mean, you know, tractors if you go in, just using Argos as an example, all the machinery, all that stuff, it's tough. And here we got a company that's really knows what they're doing, can go in there and do this and then be able to report back constantly to the staff. I think it's a great thing. And I've seen some numbers from other counties. I couldn't believe the violators or the money that actually was generated from this without it costing us the money. So
and we wouldn't have lost Argos if we'd had TMA sitting at the table with us. Okay.
Well, other questions, Commissioner Glanzer?
I just had a comment. Thank you, Mr. Crapo, for coming out and explaining it to us. And I'm so happy that you're going to outsource this. It's been a problem. And I had a question about so they get paid from the first year, and then after that we don't pay them anymore.
Right.
But if you find a violation for somebody that's been doing it for 10 years, we get all that money, and they get a percentage of all that, right?
Well, they got on homestead exemption, we can go back up to 10 years.
Okay.
Okay, so that now you can only go back as long as they've been violating. You know,
right.
Like if they died 2 years ago, you're just going back 2 years.
Sure.
Right. So in that first year, if it went back all 10 years, there's a 50% penalty on the taxes that were not paid, and there's 15% annual interest on those amounts.
And TMA gets commission on all of that.
And there'll be one lien that includes all 10 years.
Okay.
And they would get a percentage of that one lien.
Good for them. And I want to say the sweet thing.
And nothing in the future.
Yeah. Well, the sweet thing about this whole thing is that we don't pay any of it. It comes from what they find, and so I'm all in favor of it. It's great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other questions, Commissioner Farnsworth?
I mean, it sounds like a win-win situation for everybody. Does the what percentage does that company get?
Which?
The company, TMA, how much percentage?
They're on the homesteads. I think it's 30%. On tangible, I think it's 33 1/3. 35.
I thought the agreement
35?
said 35.
Excuse me, it's 35.
Is there
Although I will tell you that I had a conversation with the St. John's Water Management District, who said that we're the 4th county in their area to be doing this, and the lady said the others are getting a better deal. So I've got a meeting coming up. I've got a meeting coming up to talk about, hey, you know, you got me. I mean, we've been working on this for over 2 years, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe the prices have dropped, or something. But they're. But she told me that like on the exemptions, I think that they were getting 28 1/4 in some of the other counties. But Duval's a lot bigger county. You know, you got a lot more to get from.
Commissioner Farnsworth, are you done?
Just one thing. You reappraise the houses every 5 months? I mean, every 5 years?
No, sir. We reappraise the houses. We reappraise all property every year.
Every year?
Every year. That's the law. We physically inspect.
And physically, okay.
Physically inspect once every 5
because I think Commissioner Coleman comes by about once a month when he does mine, so.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I told him I put a tracker on him, and he's going in a circle. You know, we need to get out of that.
Commissioner Hersom and then Commissioner Clancy.
Just one question. It's something you said, so I don't want to sound like I'm raining on the parade, but you said they have means to find out information that wouldn't potentially be legal for the property appraiser's office now. And you also stated they would be a subcontractor. So is there legal issues with subcontracting with somebody that's conducting actions that aren't legal for county government to?
If you want our attorney to answer that, he'd be happy to.
Well, Scott, bill me out if I do this wrong, but there are databases that they can look at and get information from, but they can't tell me that they got information from there. If it's not a database I could legally go to myself, they cannot tell me what they see in there. They have a business partnership with LexisNexis, which is just a huge data house. You know, I mean, LexisNexis is the people who keeps the data for the credit bureaus, okay? And so they can do things like they can get a trend analysis that says, you know, that person's using all their credit cards in a very narrow area of Wyoming. So there's a probability that they're not living in Newberry, right? They can't tell me that they're spending all their money out there. They can only say there's a good reason for us to look into this, okay? I'll never know what that other source is. I just know that they have developed trend modules or whatever you want that we'll never see the results of. You know, they will not be able to legally share that with us. They can do it between LexisNexis and themselves legally, but they can't tell us what that is, and it can't, and we could never use that. You know, and I'll tell you the first. I'll back up and tell you one more thing. Well, a couple more things. Our process, once we get everybody's agreement, is we're going to try to get notice out to the public that we're about to do this and tell them how it's going to work with enough lead time to give them 3 or 4 weeks to call our office and say, you know, I was reading about this, and could you look into my case and tell me, you know, here's what's going on. You know, maybe I shouldn't be getting a homestead exemption.
So if you self-report, is there no violation?
Well,
the 15% interest and all those kind of, you just settle up with the past. Is there an incentive there to self-report, or is everything still the same?
I was hoping that was true, and I think, saying that at some points in time. The fact of the matter is, what is true is, like, if you put an addition on your house, even permitted, and we never picked it up, and then we discovered it, that we can pick it up and put it on and recover those back taxes with some things. In that particular case, if you come and you self-report it, and it's phrased as escaped property, but not property that's been undervalued, it's escaped property, then you can avoid those penalties and interest. I don't think I can legally say that those people be able to escape all of that. They'll certainly not be included in the lien process. The circumstances that they have may lead us down another road. Where there's one statute that's a shall statute, and that statute says when the property appraiser finds that somebody was receiving homestead exemption, was not entitled to it, the property appraiser shall. And so we have to work around that one. I will tell you that I cannot answer your question positively. I wish I could, because that would be the hopes that we have, is that people calling in and saying, you know, Grandma died 3 years ago. Small house, no reason for it to be probated. It wasn't enough money. I'm the only heir. I continue to live there, but the homestead exemption is still in Grandma's name. And what can we do to straighten this out? The heir would have in fact been entitled to homestead exemption in their own name, but they never made the exemption application.
I didn't mean to jump in on your line of
And
questioning.
we're going to try to, I think we're going to try to work with some of those circumstances before we give them to TMA.
Okay.
TMA will run a big data run and analysis, and they'll come back to us and they'll give us a list. We'll go through that list and we'll say, oh no, not that one, not that one. Because there'll be some, like Mr. Coleman referred to earlier, that we already know that there's special circumstances, but they are entitled to the exemption. After that point, then TMA sends out a letter. And again, they're looking for information. And they have a call center, and they have people that man that for people to call into. Because again, you know, a lot of these people are going to call and are going to, and the reasons that they're showing up on the list are going to turn out not to be reasons that disqualify. They're still going to be qualified. The homestead exemption is going to be okay, and it's going to be next. We'll go on that one. So there's several layers that we go before we really get to. Okay, now we're going to talk ugly.
Okay. Commissioner Herson, was that?
Yeah.
You heard? Commissioner Glanzer? Well, it'll come to you as soon as he walks away from the podium.
Oh, I know what it was.
Yeah.
You said you went to the board of, the school board first and the city of Gainesville, I think. Are we the first municipality after that, or how, is it looking
Micanopy,
good
Archer.
for the rest of the municipality?
I sent it out to all of y'all at the same time. I think Micanopy had the first meeting, that, and maybe because I live just outside of Micanopy city limits, maybe they picked on me. But Micanopy was the first one that I got to meet with. And Micanopy was the one who came up with many of the questions that I eventually sent you and helped me realize how much of my world you guys really don't live in. So I needed to do a better job of explaining what it is that we're trying to do and what we're trying to accomplish. So we went to Micanopy. Mr. Walker represents Micanopy, but he also represents y'all and Archer, and he started putting me on the agenda coming down the road from there.
Does the commission have any further questions? Comments? All right. We appreciate you coming out and educating us. Everybody's got till the next meeting to sleep on it, learn any more about it. Thanks for driving out here tonight, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We appreciate your time.
I will not be able to be with you in 2 weeks. My father lives in Carson City, Nevada, and it's that time of year I've got to go see him. Colleen King will be here.
All right.
So,
Wow.
thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, if you want to put this on, if you all as
No,
a
I think
commissioner
we're-
are comfortable and want to put it on for tonight, I think you can do that, save a trip of his staff coming out, but it's up to you all as far as what you want to do.
I mean, it was on the agenda, so you guys could do that if you needed more time to think about it, talk to the residents.
I'm good with going forward with it.
Oh, so
I
we
would
need to put
suggest
it
a
back
motion
on.
to
I know
put
we
it
need a
back
motion,
on.
but we need to put it back. So we need a motion to put it back on
That's what I
that,
would
and then a
suggest.
motion to approve.
Yes.
Okay, so if we want to move forward tonight, we need a motion to put it back onto the agenda. Do I have that motion?
I would make a motion to move the property tax collector's audit services back to the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Mr. Manager.
Can I request that Commissioner Glanzer amend her motion to say put it on the first item under agenda items?
I make that amendment.
Sure.
Second.
Slide everything else down.
Okay. Any questions on the motion just to put it back on the floor? It's not to actually approve it just yet. Put it back on the agenda to be able to vote on. Does the public have any questions, comments on that? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. Roll call. Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Herson.
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
No.
Commissioner Glanzer.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-1. Okay, it's back on the agenda. Do you want to wait around, sir, for us to get to there? Okay.
Oh, You're back on that later item?
We're back on the first item on the agenda. So you're stuck here with us for a few more minutes.
Okay.
Okay. A few more minutes.
Thank you.
But you may not have to come back again. Okay, now we are to the moment in the meeting where we have public announcements. So if anybody would like to tell us about successful festivals or announce lost dogs, now is your time to do so. Don't forget to introduce yourself to us.
Commissioners, Mayor, Louise Smith, Newberry Main Street, organization. Sorry, Monty, how about them Gators? I've been waiting 5 years to say that. Okay, I wanted to give y'all a little update on the Newberry Main Street Fall Festival, which was held November 17th. Needless to say, it was a phenomenal, major success. We had over 4,000 in attendance, and our vendor responses were positive and phenomenal. In addition, our food truck vendors ran out of food by 4 o'clock. We already have vendors wanting to book for next year, and we have set a date for next year, which will be November 23rd, 2019, a bye weekend for the Gators also. Also wanted to let everyone know that the Newberry Main Street Firehouse Gallery is a wonderful local place downtown to do some holiday shopping, to find some beautiful artwork and unique items for gifts for Christmas.
Isn't that the truth?
So thank y'all. We did have a
Thank
fabulous
you for all your hard
festival,
work on the festival.
and we're going to run out of room to grow. So
We'll
we're
work
going to
on
have
that
to
for
figure something out. Thank you.
Thank you. Other public announcements.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for your time. I'm Marlon Day, Library
Welcome, sir.
Manager of the Newberry Ranch Library, Alachua County Library District. We have a couple things I'd like to bring to your attention. Next Tuesday, December the 4th, a week from tomorrow at 3 p.m., we have a really neat craft program. We are making natural holiday decor. These are like clear Christmas ornaments with some natural flora that I think are really pretty cool. And it'll be a nice addition to any tree, any Christmas tree. So that's 3 o'clock, December the 4th. On Thursday, December the 6th, we have our annual gingerbread house decorating program. This is a huge event for us. We usually do between 80 and 100 gingerbread houses. If you want to attend, or if you want your children to attend, you have to sign up through our events calendar online at www.aclib.us/Newberry, or you can call us at 472-1135. Spaces are limited. Last year we did run out of houses, and we want to make sure that everybody signs up and reserves yours today, so we have enough houses to decorate. And finally, on Wednesday, December the 12th, White Acres Dairy will be bringing their baby goats to the library for story time at 10:30 a.m. Always a lot of fun, and I'd ask that you would share these with your constituents.
Thank you, sir. As always, doing some great things over there. Any other public announcements? Come on down.
Peggy Lloyd, Main Street. This we've hung a new exhibit in the gallery, and this Friday, the 30th, from 6 to 8, there will be a reception. We always have awfully good yummies and beverage, so come along, visit us. Also, 2 classes are being offered on Saturdays. The first Saturday of each month will be a drawing in pastels class done by Linda Lehrman. If you haven't seen her work in the gallery, you need to come see it, because she does some lovely things. And then there will be a class that will be two Saturdays being done by Cheryl Kurtz, who does fused glass, and she's doing a very simple group of glass ornaments, where she will do all the preliminary cutting so that young people and not so young people can do they're on Facebook. They're really awfully cute. So if anybody's interested in any of that, come out, check out over at the gallery for specific times or numbers, or you can always call me and I'll track them down for you.
Awesome.
Okay?
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate it. You had 30 seconds left, so welcome back.
I did. Marlon Day with the Newberry Lions Club. I did want to mention the Lions Club is having their big time extravaganza on December the 8th over at the Newberry Country Way Town Square. It'll be a car show,
yeah.
antique tractor show, also an arts and crafts
Breakfast
holiday.
and lunch.
Breakfast, pancakes from 8 to 10:30, lunch from 10:30 to 2. So it'll be hopefully a really nice turnout. I hope everybody's able to come out and support the Lions Club. That's December the 8th, second Saturday of next month.
Thank you, sir. Other public announcements? Hearing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and we will begin our public hearings and ordinances. We'll begin with our fiscal year 2018 final budget. Didn't ask for a motion.
No.
I didn't? Just went straight to the vote. Do I have a motion to the consent agenda? And y'all all in.
So moved.
I have a motion from
Second.
Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Herson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. Thank you, Miss Judy. I appreciate that. Yeah. Anything to move us along. All right. Dallas, take us through the final budget amendment, please, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. As you know, at the end of every fiscal year, the Finance Department prepares a review of the actual receipts and actual expenditures for each of your funds and your departments. It's part of our year-end procedure. This review is intended to identify budget and expenditure variances in need of correction. As a result of the review, the Finance Department reallocates appropriate funds throughout the budget, and state statutes allow us to do that up till 60 days after the fiscal year ends. So I do have a brief PowerPoint presentation to show you where we ended the fiscal year at. As always, these are unaudited numbers. We're still diligently working to close out the fiscal year end, so these numbers are subject to absolutely change. But nothing should be any worse than it is. It should all be better. So that's my caveat there. We're bringing you the actual financial statements in February or March. As always, overview of your general fund revenues. Again, as always, your local taxes are your majority of your revenue. About 53% of the revenues we received in the general fund this year came from local taxes, and then your next largest portion was license permits and fees, which would include your fire assessment and your building permits. In your general fund expenses, the public safety area was your largest expense at more than a third of the total budget. Public safety is going to include your law enforcement contract, your fire department, your building department, as well as code enforcement. And then your next largest portion is going to be general government, which is all the administrative departments, yourselves, the manager, myself, planning, those sorts of departments. Going through your general fund revenues, our budget last year was about $6.5 million. I don't want to say we did too good of a job of budgeting, but we came in less than $1,000 under budget in general fund at 100% of revenues collected. The one area that I would like to point out is both our licenses, permits, and fees was 9% over budget. That has mostly to do with your building permit collections. And then your charges for services were 9% over. That has to do with our solid waste collections. This was our first year fully in our new contract for franchise fees and everything. So we did have an increase of what we budgeted, but you'll see a corresponding increase in what we spent. So we had an increase in revenue, but we had an increase in expenses to go along with it. So that is part of your budget amendment we're proposing tonight, is to just true up those figures. In your general fund expenditures, for the most part, your departments did really well coming in under budget. Overall, we were at 94% of our budget spent of the $6.8 million we budgeted to spend. Some of the larger discrepancies, as you can see, in facilities as well as in solid waste. The facilities discrepancy is going to have to do with some projects that are getting carried forward. So we're going to pick those funds up out of last year and put them into this year's budget to spend the capital project money this year. And then the solid waste was the issue I just spoke about. In some of your smaller funds, capital improvement fund, your debt service fund, your Champions Park fund, they all performed pretty much as expected. Nothing really to report there. Your Diamond Sports Park fund, at the end of the year, we made about $20,000 once we finished operations at Diamond Sports Park. So this budget amendment that's before you tonight includes a transfer of the entire balance of Diamond Sports Park back to the general fund. Should be about $40,000 when it's all said and done. Your Wild Spaces surtax fund, as you can see, we came in a little bit above our projections. We're continuing to receive a little bit more money than we anticipated with the Wild Spaces, and we were banking that in the budget. As you can see, we spent a little bit of the money last year on capital projects. Your electric fund, we came in right on budget. We came in pretty under on capital outlay. You'll see that as a kind of a theme throughout your utility funds. That mostly has to do with, again, projects that are being carried forward. A large one's going to be the AMI project that's being rolled forward. We did turn a slight profit in the electric fund last year. Water and wastewater funds, again, we came in pretty much on budget in most aspects, a little bit under budget in your expenses. Once we get the final financial statements, it will show that we did lose a little bit of money in water and wastewater this year. The budget amendment, which is proposed to you tonight for fiscal year 2018, as I said, only has the adjustment for the solid waste revenues and the solid waste expenditures, as well as that transfer from your Diamond Sports Park fund. And there are no other adjustments, and we finished the year without using contingency fees. Commission, have any questions?
We appreciate your brevity, Dallas. Questions? Dallas, we transferred $40,000 from Diamond Sports Park back in. Do you know, at the end of the day, after all is said and done with the Diamond Sports Park relationship, I know some years back we lost quite a bit of money. Have we made the citizens whole on that? Did we recoup those costs? Have we get close enough to call it pretty square? Not prepared to answer that question. You'll get back to me with that question.
I can get back to you with that question.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the dais for Dallas? Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir. Mr. Mayor, this is resolution number 2018-54, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, adopting amendments to the fiscal year 2018-2019 budget and providing for severability, conflicts, and effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2018-54 upon its reading by title only.
So moved. I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Was that? A second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Good job staying right there, Dallas. Take us through the 2019 budget amendment.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. The 2019 budget amendment before you tonight is solely to address the Wild Spaces fund for the contractual obligations the Commission entered into with the Alachua County Board of County Commissioners related to Canterbury Equestrian Site. So the budget amendment puts the $1 million into the expense category in our Wild Spaces Fund. It also authorizes the interfund loan between the general fund and the Wild Spaces Fund to make up for the deficit between what's currently in Wild Spaces and what the $1 million is, until we can receive those funds back from the state through our Wild Spaces tax.
Okay. You want to read the resolution first?
I may have read that wrong last one. I may have read wrong, so we've already
I thought we were on.
For the 2018-2019 budget. So now we got to go back to the one prior.
Anybody have any questions for Dallas on that issue while we figure that out?
I can talk about, generally accepted accounting principles and GASB. Like,
Yeah, I'll ask a question. How long will, what's your estimation on how long will it take the Wild Spaces money to make up that difference that we're borrowing from the general fund?
that is going to be a policy decision that the City Commission is going to have to make when it adopts its Wild Spaces project list. The Commission could choose to not fund any other projects and make up that deficit very quickly, or if the Commission chooses to move some projects forward, it would extend the loan period out from the general fund to the Wild Spaces Fund.
It's going to be an upcoming agenda item to have that conversation, because that agreement will obviously shift some things around that we'd already decided on. So are we ready to go? All right, Mr. Attorney.
This will be resolution number 2018-53, a resolution of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, adopting amendments to the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget and providing for severability, conflicts, and effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2018-53 as read by title only.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dallas. All right, Mr. Thomas, If you'll make your way down, we'll begin the legislative public hearing and second reading of Ordinance 2018-13. We're still vacating, did I get that one? We are back on track now. We're still vacating that little strip.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. This will be the final discussion about vacating the 40-foot right-of-way adjacent to Mr. Smith's property. So, this is the second reading and hopefully enactment. Just to refresh everybody's memory, the triangular shape south of 15th Avenue on State Road 45, there's a 40-foot right-of-way between the triangular parcel that Mr. Smith owns and the CSX Railway. Mr. Smith has requested a vacation of that 40 feet to add it back to the property it was originally taken from during the 1926 platting of Sylvania Terrace. The right-of-way, like I said, was dedicated back in 1926. The utility department has confirmed that we do not have any utilities running on that 40-foot right-of-way. We don't believe that we will need that in the future. However, the city will maintain a 20-foot permanent utility easement on the westernmost portion of the 40-foot right-of-way. And so staff's recommendation is to please approve the right-of-way vacation for, by the city and enactment the second reading of Ordinance 2018-13.
Commissioner Martin, was that a question or a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were making a motion. Commissioner Coleman first, then. Question.
Just reiterating, like last time, that he bought this parcel from a family member. There was no financial gain from me.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. Commissioner Martin?
So moved.
Now, I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second. Mr. Attorney?
This will be an ordinance number 2018-13, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, vacating a 40-foot right-of-way west of and directly adjacent to Alachua County tax parcel number 2530-004-000 to the property owner of said parcel, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion, if that's the motion you made, Commissioner Martin, is to pass on second reading by title only, ordinance number 2018-13.
That is Commissioner Martin's motion, and that's Commissioner Glanzer's second. Any questions? Commissioner Glanzer made this second.
I had a question.
Any questions on the motion on the floor? Commissioner Martin?
What is it that we did 3 months, 4 months ago on the same property?
Mr. Chair, that was there was a permanent utility easement down the center of the triangular shape that he purchased that needed to be vacated as well. And so the city vacated that PUE that ran down the center of the triangle. This time around, we're vacating an actual 40-foot parcel adjacent to it, right-of-way parcel that has never, to the best of our knowledge or research, been used as a right-of-way.
Those couldn't be vacated at the same time? We had to go through them one at a time?
Mr. Mayor, they require separate actions.
Mr. Mayor, my recollection is the applications came in together. One required significantly greater level of effort by the city attorney's office. There's a state law that says when you vacate a right-of-way, half goes to each adjoining property owner. So there was a concern that by vacating this right-of-way, half would go to CSX, and that the requester, the applicant, wouldn't get benefit of half. So there was some extensive research done by the city attorney's office that in this case, since the adjacent property owner was CSX right-of-way, it would all come to Mr. Smith. And it just took that long for us to complete that research.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the dais? Any questions from the public on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Brian. Welcome back, Jamie. Tell us about legislative public hearing and second reading of ordinance 2018-19.
Good evening again. This relates to the issue that we presented at the last commission meeting about the adoption of a ordinance that allows for the implementation of a control plan for fats, oil, and grease. The introduction of fats, oil, and greases into the sewer system are prohibited, but our current ordinance didn't have any policy or way to enforce that. So the action that we're requesting this evening is that you adopt ordinance 2018-19 on second reading.
Mr. Attorney, why don't you go ahead and read that
Before I
off?
make a motion.
This is ordinance number 2018-19, an ordinance of the City of Newberry pertaining to an adoption of a policy regarding the treatment of industrial waste within the City of Newberry, amending Chapter 98, Section 98-233 of the Code of Ordinances of the city by adding a provision which adopts the fats, oils, and greases control plan, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-19 upon its reading by title only.
Anybody want to beat Commissioner Martin?
Ordinance, move to approve ordinance 2018-19.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman and a second from Commissioner Martin. Any questions on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Come on down, sir.
Hi, Ross Ambrose. I own AAA Portaserve in High Springs, but I also own a company called Aquacleave located in O'Brien. And a little over 2 years ago, we opened a plant specifically to treat trap grease material. And I would think I would benefit from this, but quite frankly, what I've learned in the last 2 years, which is why I'm actually here to say I think you're doing a really good thing, and I wish more municipalities would pass an ordinance like this. I've read ordinances that have a whole lot more teeth than this does, but this is way better than many. Basically, between restaurant owners and companies that currently service grease traps, which my company does not service grease traps, they will do everything they possibly can to put the burden on the utility and the municipality. And you want this type of an ordinance, and you want to support staff. It's a great tool that they have. I do think that as it's written, it looks like you're going for some cooperative enforcement to start with. And my experience with other municipalities in the region is, and what the haulers are going to do and the restaurants are going to do, is they will do whatever they can not to be paying to have their traps serviced and what have you. So you will probably be moving towards more fines. And if there was a way that you can incentivize businesses to actually comply and properly service, you would do a lot better. I mean, GRU has a whole group of grease police just trying to keep people from doing what they're supposed to the point where they frequently are watching people at service grease traps at all hours of the day to make sure they're actually pumping them down. Wow. And you'll probably find yourself pumping down traps to find out that they really didn't do what they said they did 24 hours earlier. But I think it's really good that you're addressing this as an ordinance and giving your staff a tool to really protect the citizens' network and deal with something that most people don't even want to know exists. So.
Well, thank you for coming out tonight and telling us, speaking to that. If you would wait right there, Commissioner Glanzer.
I got a question to Mr. Ambrose. So what would you suggest to be an incentive for these customers?
I don't know what you can legally do, but like, for instance, if there were, I don't know, a deposit that they had and then that deposit would be refunded for over the course of 3 years if they weren't having violations. If there were an annual cost, because you're actually going to undertake some costs to implement this ordinance. You know, you're going to have a registry, you're going to be issuing permits, and there's an enforcement part to it. So, and you know, you can either jack up what you charge people when they aren't complying, but there's this whole game that's played in the industry, because the restaurant will say, I have a contract, and the hauler will say, we were there, and they'll show GPS documents to say they were there, but in reality, they didn't really pump it down to say it's a 1,000-gallon trap. They took, 200 gallons. I've actually seen haulers pump 7, 8 grease traps in another regional municipality and then get right on the, it's my phone going off. It's an alarm, it's silenced, and it's still doing that.
Well, we do appreciate you coming down and talking to us.
Yeah.
Taking the time out of your day to.
Yeah, but a 4,000-gallon truck can't service 8 grease traps, and that's exactly what I saw it do. And because there should have been 8,000 gallons collected, and they didn't. And you're going to run into that problem. So thank you.
Well, we always try to start out with cooperation first in Newberry, and then we'll see how it goes after that. Okay, so we do have a motion on the floor, properly seconded. Any other public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Brian, welcome back down. We are excited about the second reading of this one too. This is legislative public hearing and second reading of ordinance 2018-20. And you get 30 seconds so the attorney can read the resolution in, because we're on a speed table here tonight.
Actually, we're doing pretty good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Now, this one's exciting. Tell folks what we're doing here.
This is very exciting. This is the second reading of ordinance 2018-20, which is an ordinance that allows for economic development ad valorem tax exemptions. And so just rehash very quickly, the purpose and intent is to provide incentives to new and existing businesses to either locate to Newberry or to expand their operations and stay in Newberry. It's intended to help grow jobs in the community, enhance the quality of life, and foster overall economic growth in the area to the benefit of all the residents of Newberry. And the exemptions basically are required to result in economic benefit to the city. And so I have all of the backup slides to go with this if there's more questions on the specifics, but staff recommendation, of course, is to enact ordinance 2018-20 on second reading. We think it would be a real benefit to the community. We'll be the second community in the city, or in the Alachua County, to have this tool in the toolbox. And thus far, the other community hasn't used it once, to my knowledge, and I have a feeling that we're going to have some opportunities to put it into use quickly and to the benefit of the community.
It's exciting. Mr. Attorney?
I'll go ahead and put this on the table. This is ordinance 2018-20, an ordinance amending Chapter 86 taxation of the City of Newberry Code of Ordinances, creating and adding Article 4 Economic Development ad valorem tax exemptions, adding sections 86 through -101 through 86-112, providing enactment authority, providing purpose and intent, providing definitions, authorizing economic development ad valorem tax exemptions, establishing application procedures, establishing an application fee, providing for appeals, providing for a repealer, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance 2018-20 as read by title only.
Motion to approve. I have a motion from Commissioner Herson. Second. And a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Any questions from the public on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Well, don't go anywhere. Stay right there. Oh, he's got to get his forms. Okay. This is Quasi Judicial Public Hearing, second reading of ordinance 2018-10. And as soon as Mr. Thomas gets back, he'll lead us through this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is also a second reading of ordinance 2018-10. This is the comprehensive, large-scale comprehensive future land use map amendment on the Comoko Ranch property. It would change the property from the current use, which is agriculture, to corporate park. It would be our first corporate park conversion on the future land use map. The subject property is approximately 172 acres. It's adjacent to Canterbury on the north side of State Road 26. The future land use change would, shown there, would change it to corporate park from its existing agricultural land use. The zoning is currently agricultural rather, and will remain agricultural until such time as they're ready to actually go into development, at which time we could either, it could be done as a planned development, or we can, we're going to work on some additional language to facilitate corporate park development as well in the zoning district. And so, prior actions, June 4th of this year, the Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval to the City Commission. June 25th, the City Commission voted the first reading to unanimously adopt. And then at that point, it was transmitted to the state for the state's expedited review process. No comments came back requiring responses from the city. However, FDOT and the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council both noted that there were potentials for significant impacts to the level of service on State Road 26 once the corporate park starts to develop. Their only recommendation was when it does develop to coordinate with FDOT to mitigate those potential adverse impacts.
At this stage, let's swear anybody in. You can go ahead and swear in Brian, or have a clerk swear in Brian.
Anybody here to speak on this, please rise so the clerk can swear you in.
And I should note, I spoke with the owners today, and they were not able to make the meeting tonight.
Mr. Thomas, can you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Then do this for me.
And I apologize, I did not read it. Do I need to go ahead and read this into the record?
I think
We've got the staff,
we're there.
and their applicant's not here, so we can go straight to questions from the dais of staff. Commissioner Martin.
Brian, I'm sure I know the answer to this, but just for the record, this proposed change wouldn't create any kind of conflict with the pending reciting of the IFAS Extension Office, correct?
Mr. Mayor, that's correct. It would not create. In fact, we believe there's actually some pretty substantial synergy that will be created between the two, because we are hoping that ultimately there will be an IFAS research and incubator located on the site, and so the positioning of the two in close proximity would provide some substantial symmetry.
Okay. Any other questions from the dais? Okay, we'll open up the floor for public comment. Each commenter limited to 5 minutes. Anyone like to make a comment? Hearing none. Okay, the applicant's not here, so we will now close the public hearing. The commission can enter into deliberations. Any last final thoughts or comments? Hearing none. I never did an ex parte either. Anybody have any ex parte they need to relate on this? I'm going to get it together here tonight, folks. I apologize. All right. Then we will entertain. I'm sorry, go ahead. Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2018-10, CPA 18-02, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment of the future land use plan map of the City of Newberry Comprehensive Plan under the regular amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in land use classification from agriculture to corporate park on certain lands within the City of Newberry, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-10, CPA 18-02, as read by title only.
Move to approve ordinance 2018-10.
Second. A motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Herson. Any final questions, comments on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Don't go anywhere, because our first agenda item. There we go. It's been a moving target here tonight. Okay, so now we have the property tax collection audit services back on the agenda item, and I don't think we need another presentation. But does any?
Mr. Mayor, since we already have discussed the matter, I'll go ahead and lay out the motion if you all choose to go forward with it. This is to authorize the appropriate officials from the City of Newberry to enter into the memorandum of understanding for the use of property tax collections to fund certain ad valorem tax exemption audit services between the City of Newberry and our Alachua County property appraiser.
Okay.
Motion to, oh, do we have to take a motion?
We can take a motion now.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Are there any more questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Commissioner Martin?
Yeah. No disrespect, Mr. Crapo. I kind of felt when we were discussing this, we were kind of threading a little bit of a legality needle here, in so much that it wasn't really quite legal for the county to do that, or for your office to do that. So we just kind of hire a person to create a little bit of a workaround. I'd like to be more comfortable with it. It feels a little Machiavellian to me from a legislative standpoint. Although I appreciate the intent, I'm just a little bit challenged with the vehicle and how we're getting there. I do agree that these people, if they're skirting the law, need to be brought into compliance, and corrective action should be taken. But I'm just not totally comfortable with this vehicle myself, so I can't necessarily support it at this point.
If I can
Mr. Attorney?
relate to that, Mr. Mayor, we have access, our law firm has access to the LexisNexis as well, and we have to sign certain forms that we're doing research on people for legitimate business purposes, which we sign off on in an affidavit format to do that. So we have access to the database. We do not have the ability to run programs on that as Tax Management Associates has. So they have a different ability to look deeper into what it is that we have access to as well. So I think what Ed Crapo was saying earlier is that he doesn't have necessarily the ability to run, to access this information and then run the search requests in a way that Tax Management Associate. I think that's really what he's paying for with the couple of $1 million of investment that TMA has put into this, that he simply doesn't have the budgetary authority to gain access not only to the computers to do that, but also the programs to run it. If that helps answer.
And again, no disrespect, but I'd like to be a little bit more comfortable with it than I am. That's all I'm saying.
I understand. My office also has arrangements with LexisNexis, and we use that database in our current Homestead investigations now. We can't do it on a mass basis. We do it one at a time. I don't think there's anything in this that's skirting any laws.
And I don't necessarily think that there is. I'm not charging that there is.
I understand, and
it's just part of my disclosure.
I'm afraid I may have misportrayed some of what they're doing with it. But I know there's nothing that approaches a legal problem in this process.
Well,
and there's nothing a whole lot different from what we're doing one at a time now. Just now going to be able to do it a whole bunch at a time.
Sure.
Well, I feel like, you know, we had this on the agenda, and then we kind of sank into a let me just get the information and think on it mode, and then it came back. So if anybody else feels like they need more time, we'd certainly hear those concerns. If not, okay, are there any other questions on the motion on the floor? Does the audience have any questions on the motion on the floor? Okay, roll call. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Herson?
Aye.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
No.
Commissioner Glanzer? Motion passes 4-1. Thank you very much. We appreciate you staying longer. Okay, now we're on to new item B, which is the proposed amendments to the comprehensive plan land development. Welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A little while ago, I believe it was October 8th City Commission meeting, we discussed the potential for amendments to our comp plan and land development regulations that would facilitate the development of large-scale solar farms in the city of Newberry, based on some presentations that I saw when I was at the American Planning Association conference in the summer. And so just a brief refresher, features of the large-scale solar plant. They have very low impacts on the land. They don't even use concrete as mountings. They drive the steel posts into the ground, and then when they're done, they extract them so it doesn't leave any residue in the ground, doesn't leave any concrete in the ground. They're virtually silent. They use minimal resources of water just for basically cleaning. they are fully automated, so you don't have people on site most of the time, except doing maintenance occasionally. They're low to the ground, although since this presentation was actually put together, did discover that the movable solar panels that track the sun tend to be a little bit higher, up to 15 feet. And so you may notice in the language that's proposed, it says 15 feet instead of 9 feet. And they all meet or exceed Florida wind load requirements. In fact, the Florida Power and Light folks that gave the presentation said that the last 2 hurricanes that have gone through that have actually hit areas that had these farms, the only damage to the panels wasn't from them being torn out, but was from flying debris that came onto the property and damaged them. It helps to diversify our ad valorem tax base, which is, of course, always a good thing. There can be some job creation with local maintenance facility folks. Of course, it's contributing to emissions-free energy generation and energy independence. And when it's done, they pull up stakes, and the land is ready to be reused for agricultural or other purposes with minimal reclamation required. To accomplish this, we went back and looked at the existing code and areas where it would be advantageous to make some changes. So in the comprehensive plan, there are 4 policies that we think would be appropriate for amendment. Basically, the first one would add solar farms as an acceptable or allowable use in corporate park and industrial future land use categories. The second would be in the planned developments within the transportation enhancement project area. That's closer into town. There are some large tracts, though, that this still could qualify. And then also for planned developments outside of the transportation enhancement project area. And then the fourth policy amendment would allow it in agriculture, which of course is the largest potential within the city of Newberry. The proposed land development regulation amendments, there are 6 potential sections that we could go into. The first one establishes definitions of what a solar farm is and what a solar energy facility is. Adds the language that spells out all of the solar energy facilities language in terms of the design standards and what has to be incorporated into a solar farm. That would be under 4.2.40. And then the other sections, 417, 18, 21, and 4, add it to the various zoning districts that we're suggesting it would be appropriate in. So industrial, planned rural residential development, planned development, and agricultural. One caveat on the planned rural residential development, it might seem odd that we would suggest that that's an appropriate place for it, but if you remember, the planned rural residential developments have a undeveloped component in them. And so you may have a couple hundred acres that are going to sit undeveloped for a number of years. Those undeveloped parcels are allowed to be used for all other agricultural purposes other than intensive agricultural. And so if we allow this on regular agricultural land, it makes sense we would also allow it. And it could also provide energy to the development, potentially, if they wanted to create an on-site generation facility. That's actually the detail we already spoke about. And so basically, staff recommends that the commission, before I get ahead of myself, I'm sorry. Potential discussion topics. One of these amendments that we've suggested would actually allow solar farms as a use by right within these land use categories and the zoning districts that we proposed. So the only review, if they were allowed by right, the only review that the commission would have would be on the actual site plan once it comes in. The site plan is applied for. There is an alternative, which would be that you could approve these solar farms on a case-by-case basis through special exception. And so I just wanted to point that out, that that's a fairly important difference, that distinction for you all policy-wise to think about is whether to allow them by right, which is actually staff's recommendation, as well as, or alternatively through special exception process. And we also, I just wanted to, you've met him before, but introduce Craig Brazier. I told him I'd butcher his last name, and I did. Brazier. He's with CHW Coincidentally, we were discussing this with them, and they've got experience in this, and so they helped us with the language. So he's here also to answer any questions that the commission might have about some of the proposed amendments.
Mr. Manager.
Just a point of maybe for some clarity, under the discussion topics where you said it could be included by right or by special exception, you gave a whole laundry list of zoning categories. Would it also be appropriate for the commission to consider it by right in certain zoning categories and by special exception in certain others? Am I correct in understanding that?
Mr. Mayor, the city manager is correct. That is an option as well. Each one of them could be done individually. Some of them could be by special exception, and some of them could be by right. Again, it would be a policy decision for the commission to decide.
Commissioner Glenn.
Wait, go ahead, finish your thought.
And I was just saying, what we're asking for is actually to direct staff to present the proposed comprehensive plan and land development regulation amendments to the Planning and Zoning Board for review and recommendation back to the commission. So this is really just asking if you like what you see and you want us to further the process to then move to the next step, which would be the full review and discussion and hearings on this by Planning and Zoning and the commission.
Commissioner Glanzer.
So I do like what I see. And just one thing, that if a developer comes in and they want to put it in a PRD, that we would have the ability to approve where it goes within the site, within that project. That's just, I wouldn't want them to just put it anywhere.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, actually the part of the PRD is a master plan, and in the master plan it designates where the undeveloped area is, and so it would be limited to that space, not the open space requirement, but just the undeveloped area requirement.
Other questions or thoughts from the dais? So do we need a motion or a head nod to send this back to P&Z and start the process?
I believe a head nod is fine.
Okay. Everybody's good? Okay. Is there any questions from the public on this item? Come on down, Miss Debbie.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I want to commend you for being proactive and sending this through staff and bringing it back. It's a very good draft. And I'm very excited about the possibility that we could maybe one day have a solar farm in Newberry. I would like clarification. Under agriculture, we have permitted principal uses, and then we also have permitted principal uses, I believe, under the PRRD category. I know that right now under PRRD, if that parcel is not being developed, it can be leased out for agricultural uses. Is that correct, Mr. Mayor?
Are we prepared to answer that question here tonight?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the entire property, before it's developed, can still be used for agricultural purposes, but for the purposes of a solar farm, it would be limited to the area that was defined as the undeveloped area in the approved PRRD master plan. And so you wouldn't, at least the way it's written here, would not be able to put it on the entirety of the PRRD, only the undeveloped portion of the master plan.
Was that your answer, Commissioner Coleman? Okay, just checking. Hey, Miss Debbie, you got a follow-up?
Mine was a little more.
Yeah, you had more detail. Yeah, I'm with you.
And then the only other issue that I saw was whenever it really describes or goes into detail about solar energy facilities. I noticed that under number 3 that it says provide no less than 10-foot buffers on all sides of the site. And I'm just wondering, what does a 10-foot buffer do? And it can't be landscaped.
Mr. Thomas.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Is that a standard that you came across when you were looking at these?
Generally so, and the thinking behind that is when you're talking about the scale of a large-scale solar farm, the hundreds, if not thousands of thousands of panels that would be involved in one of these, and the hundreds of acres. 10-foot versus 100-foot will be almost indiscernible, but the difference between the two in terms of a visual buffer. As far as providing landscaping, If you would basically, if we were to try to incorporate some kind of a landscaping buffering requirement, vegetative buffering requirement, you'd be talking about potentially thousands of linear feet, which would basically typically drive the price up on the project to the point where it wouldn't be financially feasible to the, or at least not financially attractive to a potential developer. And so for that reason, and it does not seem to be standard. Now, if there were some direct adjacency to residential property that was, close at hand, I would like to think that during the site plan review process that the developer would be willing to put some sort of vegetative buffering up. And it does call for that when they have other structures other than the actual solar panels for the buildings or whatever, the accessory buildings that are going to be located there. So.
Okay. Ms. Debbie, you got about 60 seconds left. You got another one?
No, just thank you. And I didn't introduce myself, Debbie Boyd, citizen.
I know you so well. I heard it in my head.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for staff? And we have the head nod already, so you're going to go through the process and bring that back to us. Okay, that will move us on to item C, which is the Champions Park Operations and Management Contract. And while Travis is making his way down, does any commissioner have any statements to make, Commissioner Coleman?
Sure. There has recently been some questions floating around about my ability to objectively vote on this issue around Champions Park. While the city legal and my own legal counsel have advised me that I have done nothing wrong between me and Mr. Norfleet, I have taken it upon myself out of an abundance of caution to ask the Ethics Board for an advisory opinion. While I wait for that response, I will recuse myself from voting on this matter. I know that I haven't done anything wrong, but it is important that we all work to instill that confidence in this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coleman. We appreciate that.
All right.
Okay, Travis, you want to take us through?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here to discuss the Champions Park Operations Contract. Here tonight to ask you to authorize the city manager to execute the contract with Rad Sports Newberry LLC for the operations of the park. A little background, back in July, we had the top 3 respondents to the RFP present to you all. And then after that, we were tasked with negotiating a contract with Rad Sports. And we've done so. That's what I'm here tonight for. A few key elements of the contract, considerations, remain unchanged from the previous contract. 5% of all tournament revenues will come back to the city. 20%, that's gross. 20% of gross revenues from non-tournament activities and events. It will have a $250,000 max compensation to the city on an annual basis. And our monthly payments will begin on February 15th, 2019. The term is 5 years, with it ending December 31st, 2023. Default and termination, if the operator fails to submit reports timely or to pay the portions that we just discussed, they have 7 days to cure the default. If they don't cure it within those 7 days, the city has the right to terminate the agreement upon delivery of the notice. Again, that's our recommended action, and if you guys have any questions about the contract, I'd like to answer them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Travis about the contract? Is that 7 days, that's stricter than the previous contract? We have, if there's a problem, 7-day notice, and then the contract is terminated?
It has 7 days to cure it.
Okay. Commissioner Glanzer?
It was a $250,000 maximum that the city would be paid. Is there a minimum? Was it $25,000?
$25,000.
Okay.
Yep. That all remains the same as in the existing.
Okay. Our original motion was to authorize the city manager to begin negotiations with the winner of the bid process. He's brought back a contract that's pretty similar to the one that almost virtually identical to the one we had before. You have any questions? We have the applicant here as well to answer any questions. If you don't have any questions for Travis, or we can entertain a motion.
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute the agreement between Rascals and the city.
Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer.
Second.
I have a second from Commissioner Herson. Questions on the motion on the floor? Commissioner Farnsworth.
How does this contract differ from the proposal?
It really does not. It remains pretty much the same. A few things in the contract that we just shored up the language a little bit. Nothing really changed.
Could you give the commission an example of that?
One example I could probably think of would be the non-compete was really vague. Just basically previously, if you came to us and discussed, what you wanted to do, we would discuss it and either move forward or come up with a, solution. This time, we kind of discussed what a non-compete was. 50% or more of your participants need to reside outside of the 32669 zip code. Those kind of things. Kind of things that are specific to the contract. So there's no questions with the operator and then the contract manager.
So for the non-compete, they can do league tournaments and things as long as 50.
They can run it competitively.
1% come from outside the 32669. But the non-compete clause is still there.
Yes, it still
remains. But now the criteria has been listed for what that means.
Right.
Okay.
Might make it easier to understand. This is the things that you can and can't do. I think previously it was just there was a non-compete in there, and although we were open to ideas, I think that kind of prevented discussion.
Okay. Does that help you, Commissioner Hardwood?
Other thing is, how much did the city make off the tournament that they ran?
We broke even, just a little more. I don't have the exact figure in there, but it was a pretty much break even. We did receive some funding from GSC, the Sports Commission, which kicked us up. But I'd say with the GSC money, just around $1,000.
Other questions? Commissioner Martin?
This is a question for the city attorney. Do we know who Anthony Homer is?
I believe Mr. Homer is one of the principals behind Rad Sports.
Okay. And we have authority to execute the contract with Richard?
Right? Yes. Okay. Yes. Richard is listed as the manager of Rad Sports Newberry LLC.
Yeah, I see that.
And really the motion should be amended to add appropriate city officials, including the mayor and city clerk and myself, to enter into the contract along with the manager.
Will you amend your motion?
I do.
Will you amend your second?
Amend my second.
Okay, the amended motion is second is on the floor. Any further questions from the dais? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right. Good job, Travis. Way to put one more issue,
Thank you, Travis,
behind us. And okay, I have us at item D again, but this time it's resolution 2018-52.
Good evening again. This item before you is where staff is requesting that you pass a resolution in support of a transportation alternatives program with the FDOT. Previously in 2016, 2017, we submitted to the TAP program. These submissions have to go through Alachua County. Alachua County is only allowed to submit 2 for the county. Our previous application was ranked number 1 both of those funding cycles, but the funding is for the entire DOT district, and the project has not been funded by DOT as of yet. We're requesting that you reaffirm this application and allow staff to submit a companion application for some pedestrian lighting to accompany this sidewalk project that had previously been submitted. recommended action, we're requesting that you adopt Resolution 2018-52.
Mr. Attorney?
Mr. Mayor, this is resolution number 2018-52 of the City of Newberry, Florida. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida to support construction of sidewalks and installation of streetlights on the corridor of State Road 26 and State Road 41 with transportation alternative funding, and authorizing staff to submit the applications, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and establishing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2018-52 upon its reading by title only.
So moved.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions for staff on the motion on the floor? Does the public have any questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. New item E is the quasi-judicial hearing procedures. We are updating the procedures that I failed to read earlier. So, come on down. This is you, right, Ryan?
Yep.
All right.
Yes,
Bring
sir.
us through the
I'm going to
revised.
do the introduction, and the city attorneys are there to fill in all the blanks.
All right.
As you said, this is an update to the quasi-judicial procedures. Quite some time ago, the commission directed staff to get with the city attorney's office and come up with a revised set of procedures that made more logical sense and made the order of presentations flow better, as well as address some issues that weren't being addressed with our current policy. And so changes are proposed in the order of presentations, the provision for a third-party intervening party, what we call party interveners, and the amount of time for public comment. Those are the substantive changes. Presentation order under the current changes, under the proposed changes rather, staff will give an overview, which is strictly an overview. It's not the staff report, and there's no recommendations made. It just informs the board and the listening public of what the actual topic is and the nature of the application. And that, we believe, will provide a smoother transition into the second step, which is then the applicant giving their presentation. Where it is right now, you just jump right into the applicant's presentation, and it oftentimes it doesn't seem to flow appropriately. So after the staff review, the applicant gives their presentation. They will have unlimited time for their presentation. The board can cross-examine the applicant. Staff will then present the staff report and recommendations with unlimited time. And of course the board and the applicant can cross-examine staff, and staff can cross-examine the applicant as well. After that step of the process, then the third-party intervener can give their presentation testimony. The third-party intervener basically is someone approved by the chair that they also will have unlimited time for presentation. They can be cross-examined by the board, staff, or the applicant, and they basically well, I'm sorry, let me back up. I'm getting ahead of myself here. There will be a little bit more explanation of what the third-party intervener is in a succeeding slide. Just go through the presentation order, and then after the third-party intervener's testimony and any cross-examination, then participants, meaning basically the public, will have their comment time, either in opposition or support of the application. Under the current rules, only the applicant and city staff have standing to give presentations. This proposal would allow for the third-party intervener, party intervener we're calling them, which basically have to show to the chair that they have some sort of a special interest or a special injury related to the application that the public at large doesn't have. And if the chair agrees, then they're granted status as a party intervener. They basically have to submit a written request to the chair. That written request can be presented at any time, including at the hearing. They have to provide an outline of their interests and all the documentation they plan to present, and the chair either approves or denies this status as a party intervener at that time.
So Brian, this, I know one of the things we've been working on was the timeline to be declared a third-party intervener, and whether it was a legitimate space of time to do that. Do you feel like now someone would have, from notice to first meeting, they've got plenty of time to contact people and be declared a third-party intervener?
Well, Mr. Mayor, there's never seems to be enough time for any of the parties to prepare adequately, but this is the maximum amount of time possible to give, basically, from the moment they receive their notice all the way up to the actual hearing itself. And the way that kind of came about in the proposal was the city attorney did quite a bit of research on case law relative to quasi-judicial proceedings, and basically not giving them every possible chance to step up as a party intervener, and not giving them unlimited time, such once they're granted status, such as the applicant and staff, is problematic in terms of case law. And so erring on the side of caution to make sure that we're providing all opportunity for due process, we feel this is the best way to go, to give them, it gives them all the amount of time. And in fact, there's even an opportunity at the last moment for someone to at least claim that they have party intervener status and petition the commission or the board to postpone to another meeting so that they have adequate time to prepare, which is of course the decision of the board, but it gives them an opportunity to make that claim.
Is it the decision of the board or the decision of the chair?
Actually, good point.
It's the decision of the chair. The chair has the authority to grant intervener status and consultation with your council. So that's how it'll work.
Commissioner Glander.
I'm glad. Thanks for all your hard work on doing these procedures. In the past, I remember when the public would come forward after spending a lot of money trying to defend their, argument, and they were only given 5 or 10 minutes. And I think this is greatly, it levels the playing field. So now the public has more of an opportunity to talk about what the applicants are wanting to do. So I support this.
Commissioner Martin.
Mr. Mayor, is this really just creating a bar to which this special treatment is given someone other than the public? Because to me, other than the time allowed, it just seems like they're fairly equal in terms of their dog in the fight, so to speak. But am I reading that correctly?
Well, I think and Commissioner Hertzman has really been point on this, but I think the legal issue was that we discovered that not giving the third-party intervener an equal chance to make a presentation created an issue, the potential for an issue for us. And so there's a lot of small details in this, but that's the main stroke. Commissioner Hertzman, would you?
I think it goes back to what Brian's already presented on slide 6, that to get third-party intervener status, you have to be able to demonstrate special interest or special injury to reach that bar, as opposed to the Joe Public comment status of that. So you have to be able to demonstrate that it has some type of larger scale impact to you, rather than just being interested in the process itself. Again, it goes back to the ideas that some of these issues would come forward. The public has some special interest, but should be allowed to have access to a larger pool of expertise to be able to give testimony, and then that testimony be allowed some amount of, or in this case, unlimited time to be able to be presented, as opposed to the 3 or 5 minutes you would get as an individual from the public.
Does that answer your question there?
Yeah, tells me that I was pointing in the right direction at least. Is the party intervener a word we came up with?
No, that's defined in the law. It's a legalese term, meaning as an example.
We tried to come up with a better term.
I mean, special interested party.
Yeah. The case law talks about interveners, and an intervener is somebody that comes in typically into a piece of litigation. and you're granted party status. That's what happens with it.
Okay. And in the 5 minutes, I'm sorry, I had one other question, and this may just be a small point, but if to be declared a third-party intervener, I've got to do it in writing and provide the outline and all the documentation. Can the third-party intervener still present new documentation at a later time, or whatever they present to be declared a third-party intervener is the lump sum of the documentation that they can
Well,
present?
if they came before you, for instance, let's say I'm a neighbor that is, there's a big zoning project that's going on to the neighboring property. There's some special use permit, or there's something that is, and typically these cases are going to be hot potato issues. There's a big controversy associated with this type of use that's on my property, and I show you as the chair that I have a special interest here, or I have a special injury because I have a need for sound attenuation or visual buffering or whatever it may be. And so, and I only found out about it 2 hours before the hearing was going to, I missed all the ads, I missed all the notices that were posted on the property. For whatever reason, I'm coming to you now and saying, look, I know it's the hearing time, but I need to show you my property is right here compared to where the adjacent property that's going to have the special use permit. So I show you all that at the hearing, and therefore the chair has the ability to say, okay, you meet the idea of a intervener, and I'm going to allow you unlimited time, just like the applicant or just like the municipality, and you can make your presentation. If you're at that late date, it's unlikely you're going to have any documentation, or you're going to have an expert witness. But that's the nature of what we're allowing somebody to do.
Okay.
And it's the whole idea of procedural and due process fairness. You're trying to give everybody as much right to state their position, so that when you're making a collective decision on the property, that they have given you as much information as they feel is appropriate. And if that happens, the reviewing authority, which is usually the circuit court on a review process, is going to look at the record and say, well, you gave that person as much opportunity to make their case as possible.
Okay. Any other broad strokes, Ryan? Do we increase the time limit?
Yes, sir.
Or we've solidified the time limit.
For the party interveners, currently each member of the public can speak up to 5 minutes in favor or against the application. The proposal would actually reduce it down to 3 minutes. This basically brings it in consistent with the city's general public comments policy for other public hearings, and would speed up the flow of substantially similar comments during contentious hearings. But of course, the chair still maintains discretion to grant on an individual basis more time if somebody gets up and is making unique points that haven't been brought up before. The chair has the discretion to say, fine, you can have another couple of minutes or another 3 minutes or something. Representative groups of 3 or more participants can be represented by an individual speaker. Basically, they would be ceding their opportunity to speak to a representative that they feel presents well for them or presents their interests better. They basically have to be part of that group. You'd sign an affidavit stating that you're being represented by that group. And staff recommendation is approve the revised quasi-judicial procedures and adopt resolution 2018-22. And the city attorney is there to answer any detailed questions.
All right. We don't have a motion yet. Does someone want to make that recommended staff motion? Oh, go ahead.
We'll get there in a second. All right, I just got it. This is resolution number 2018-22 of the City of Newberry, Florida. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving amendments to the City of Newberry's rules of procedure to replace the city's existing quasi-judicial procedure with a more comprehensive procedure, repealing all resolutions in conflict and establishing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2018-22 upon its reading by title only.
Motion to approve resolution 2018-22.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Herson, a second from Commissioner Martin. Any questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Any questions or comments on the motion on the floor from the public? Come on down.
Debbie Boyd, citizen again, and thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for recognizing that we had a deficiency in our quasi-judicial procedures a year ago, actually a little bit more than a year ago, and directing staff to go ahead and pursue creating some very fair due process procedures. I want to thank Courtney Johnson from Mr. Walker's office. She really took it and did the most of the work. And then the rest of the staff, Brian and Scott and Rich Maltby. And am I forgetting anyone?
Yourself.
And just all of the meetings that we've had and all the conversations and, to make this as right as possible going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention and giving us the opportunity and chance to always do better. It's our goal every day. Any other questions or comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Martin?
Sure. As government geeky as I can be, sometimes I end up doing a lot of these, and they do come out very clunky and administratively very monotonous. So as weird as it sounds, I'm kind of excited about trying something new here as this goes forward. I think it will make a lot more sense to the general public. It kind of makes it a little bit more layman's terms friendly, and I think that is good for everybody involved. So thank you.
I agree. Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passed unanimously, and we are on to comments. City Manager?
And Mr. Mayor, with regards to that last item, just a personal observation, one of the best cooperative efforts that I've seen in a long time. It's about 15 months worth of work. It involved members of this elected body, it involved staff, the city attorney's office put in a ton of work, members of the general public. I think Ms. Boyd actually had legal counsel assisting, and there were lots of, from time to time there was disagreement, but everybody continued to work diligently through it, and I'm really thinking that we came up with as sound a policy as we could, better than I had hoped for. My constant feedback was improvement. Just get improvement, and if we need to tweak it in the future, we will, and that stands, but we really got a good document straight out the gate. And I'll shut up about that and move on to city manager comments. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. And we had a great Thanksgiving, and you know what Thanksgiving means around here. It means that the city of Newberry had a food drive. And as the mayor put in one of his emails, that to the victor goes the spoils, and in this case the spoils are bragging rights. And y'all been around here long enough to know that I don't get bragging rights very often. I'm not the victor very often. So when I get the chance to be the victor, I'm going to take the floor for a minute, even on a late night. I'm just kidding. As a whole, the city of Newberry raised 1,375 pounds of food delivered to Blessed Hope. Very excited about that. That is, I think, the fourth consecutive year that we've exceeded our goal. Our goal's been 1,000 pounds, and we have exceeded it. And this year, I think we did it with one arm behind our back, because we had so many other tasks. Thanksgiving came early this year. We were really pushing hard on the effects of Hurricane Michael. And so for staff to dig down deep and find 1,300 pounds of food, 1,400 pounds of food to donate, huge. And I think it would be irresponsible of me not to point out that 465 pounds of that came from a 3-person team in city administration. So Amy, Judy, and the city manager really knocked themselves out getting that 465 pounds of food. Yeah. We were followed very closely by a department that has more responsibility areas than we had people on our team. So Public Works, utilities, park maintenance, facilities, all that mass of people in that group came up with 448 pounds. The rest of the list is outlined in an email. I won't go into which group found 37 pounds, but thank you, Commissioner Herson, for providing 37 pounds worth of food. And next year, we'll get that challenge back out there and see if we can't turn it around. Again, we're four-year bridesmaids, very happy to finally win something. If you've noticed, driving around in the daylight or after dark, Christmas decorating is underway, so we got a great big start on it last week, and looks like we're getting pretty close to finishing up. Very excited about that. We're meeting with Florida Northern Railroad tomorrow. That's exciting to me because we get lots of commentary about the railroad and how they operate in Newberry, and they've just been an enigma. I've not met anyone from the railroad, and so we have a meeting tomorrow. Very excited. We're really going to be discussing the city's use of railroad right-of-way for parking and ingress and egress, potentially getting an ingress-egress easement all the way to Champions Park so that we could have a future trail there. I will work on that. Meeting with FMPA this Thursday to interview engineer candidates for the city's AMI project. Big milestone for us. So we had two very good proposals submitted. We're going to be interviewing those, and we'll select one. Staff will make a recommendation. It'll come before the board with a contract arrangement with FMPA to bring the engineer on board. And then very next thing that'll be happening, which is slated for early 2019, is an RFP for the AMI construction phase of the project. And you received an email invitation to Argos's open house Thursday evening. It's this Thursday at 5 p.m. If you've never been, or even if you have been previously, I recommend that you attend. They're one of the most significant businesses in Newberry. It will blow you away how they go about their business. This open house was very eye-opening to me, so I encourage everyone to attend.
And there's usually dinner involved as well. So.
And I purposely didn't say that in a public meeting, but I'm sure the folks from Argos will appreciate you mentioning that. And just
they had too many leftovers last year.
Just a reminder that next Wednesday, December the 5th at 6 p.m., we're conducting a joint meeting with the School Board of Alachua County here. We're going to be working on the agenda tomorrow and Wednesday. If you have items, we think 3 to 4 topics is probably all we have time for in this introductory meeting, kind of a get-to-know each other type of meeting. But we'll be working on the agenda, and if you have ideas, please feel free to email me or Amy or Judy or anyone. We'll try to bring it into a very concise agenda for us. That concludes my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. City Attorney.
December 17th is our ethics training. It'll be at our office, and so you'll have some refreshments and something to eat. If you decide that you can make it, you'll get your 4 hours training, which is due before the end of the year. And also, hopefully, you'll have a little camaraderie with other officials from the other cities that we represent. It's my understanding that 4 o'clock is the time frame. It's a 4-hour thing that you have to do, and we will be talking about procedures associated with ethics and keeping everybody out of trouble. That would be the game plan.
Do you need an RSVP to plan?
We would like that so we can know how much food to order and that kind of thing. So
look at your schedules and see if you can make it down there. I think it's a great opportunity to meet with some other municipalities and hear what they're doing. Wait, what?
Can you bank hours for the next
You
year?
are. You have to do it every
Yes.
year. It's one of those.
Bank hours.
Nope, you got to do it. Get your 4 hours in every year. And the county is not doing it this year, so this is one of the opportunities. You can get a tape, books to tape type thing if that's what you want, but this is an opportunity to do it live if you want.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk. Thank you, ma'am. And Commissioner Coleman.
I want to give my time when it gets over to Commissioner Farnsworth so he can brag once again from what I know we had that Thursday meeting, but I want to hear him tell us how great his golf game was.
Commissioner Harrison.
Well, I'll represent both the commission and all the other departments that were unfortunately not the leaders in the food development, or food drive, and certainly enjoyed being able to attend Thanksgiving dinner with the city and the staff and bring in some food. I just wonder how heavy the foot was on the scale or how much it was picked up for everybody else.
We all wanted the same thing every year.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Farnsworth?
Well, as Commissioner Coleman alluded to, I once again carried my team. It consists of me and Travis and Noel. And after all the begging that Commissioner Coleman did to be on my team, I did contact him to be on my team, and he came up with some excuse about a GI bug or something, I don't know. But we did have a great time. It was a great tournament, and I haven't seen my trophy yet, but I'm sure it's somewhere. And but it was a good time, and it was for a good cause, and I think hopefully it will continue to get better and better every year.
Is there a picture of his suit?
Yes. There.
We can put on.
We'll make sure we have it on the next agenda.
Okay.
We'll with him holding his trophy there. So, which I have to. It was supposed to be there on his desk tonight. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I think I heard someone make a motion and a second and a unanimous vote to make it all of y'all's screensaver on your computer.
Man.
It stole the show. There's no doubt it shook all the other players there that day. They were off their game. They just couldn't compete. So, thank you, Commissioner Farnsworth, and a lot of class not mentioning the Florida game. Commissioner Martin.
Well, I have no class, and I note the Florida 41-14.
See, I told you.
But,
Commissioner Glazer.
I just wanted to thank everybody who made possible the community feast over at Lowe'sport Park last Sunday. It was tremendous, and to raise awareness of the Truth and Reconciliation initiative we have. CLF made a great dinner, and there was hundreds of people there, and it was just the warmest, most wonderful event we've seen. Also, I wanted to thank Newberry Main Street Organization for the big success they had, and there's Commissioner Farnsworth, whatever his name is. I lost my train of thought now. Anyway.
See, works every time.
But I also wanted to thank the commission for the money they appropriated this year to the Main Street Organization, because I think it helped for advertising, publicity, and whatnot to make it a success like it was. And I think you put us on the map this year. Thank you for that. And that ends my comments.
Thank you. Well, I want to appreciate everybody who not only came and played in the Mayor's Masters, but also sponsored holes in the Mayor's Masters this year. It was a great event for a great cause. We've been talking about how veteran suicide spikes around the holiday season. So the whole idea there is for us to come together and make sure that our local vets understand that we love them, we appreciate what they've given to their country, what they've given to us. And so for everybody up here that has helped make that happen, I do thank you. I want to echo Commissioner Glanzer's thought. Sunday was heartwarming. It was wonderful. We had 12 churches participate in spreading a message of love and compassion and forgiveness and unity. And then we had about 600 people show up at the park. So all around the community, we just came together to celebrate that we are one community, and we're going to get to know each other, and we're going to sit next to strangers and introduce ourselves, and it was great. I just want to remind folks that the NewberryUnited.com website is active. That's the website that we've created to help raise awareness about the adolescent opioid addiction in Alachua County, which is the second highest addiction rate in the entire state. We're only 0.1% off from being number one, which is not a number one ranking that you want. So it's a website that's in progress. I'm still taking resources, constructive criticism. So please visit the website. Let me know what you think. Let me know how we can make it better, more interactive. Resources for mental health, depression, suicide, any of those related issues that go into drug addiction. We want to make it as vibrant as possible. So please check it out and then let me know, how we can make that better. So newberryunited.com, and with that, I will open the floor for public comment.
Peggy Loy, Main Street End. But I just want to make a comment about the Main Street, the advertising for the festival. It actually was not the city. The city gives us a great deal of support. But the advertising for this was done by the local businesses in this community. A lot of businesses helped out and made that possible for us. But the main reason I wanted to come up here as a citizen, in that I have a new house in this community. I've had a lot of trouble with the exit, the wastewater going out of my house to the sewer. A lot of trouble. Well, they tried to find out where the problem was, the plumbers who came. They've been there 3 times. And they couldn't figure out how the line went from the house to the sewer. So I called Jamie. Thank you, Jamie. To figure it, because it looked like the line was going that way, but logically it should go this way. So I wanted to find out where the sewers were there. In the meantime, after he gave us that information, in the meantime, Chad just happened to be driving past. Chad is in charge of water and waste. And he just wandered over to see what was the problem, if he could help. Well, they were trying to track down where the line went so they could maybe fix it. And so he had 2 guys come with a device that would tell him how deep it was. Well, it turns out that the line meanders off under the driveway and then comes back out into the yard. So it's going to have to all be replaced. So the city is cooperating with the plumbers so they can put a new clean out at the road. But it was just, here are these 3 guys out there with 2 plumbers, and my brother-in-law Charles Jones and me. We were like having a party in the yard. But it was, and I think the plumbers were a little surprised at how helpful and cooperative the city people were. So it was really a good feeling. Thank you, city.
Thank you. We love to hear that. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned.